I am smiling and I am happy, but I had just gone through a really big crisis with my 11-year-old, and she's in the hospital to this day. She gets to come home on Wednesday, but she had a complete depressive breakdown, had suicidal ideation and all of this. And a lot of it stemming from being in accelerated classes, starting middle school, and then she's doing virtual. And then I had to go back into the classroom physically. And so she was here with her sister and didn't have another outlet. And so in navigating that, it was like, well, you can't judge a book by its cover just because I'm smiling, right? That doesn't mean that there isn't something bad happening.
Good evening, everybody. This is a special episode of Mindset of Steel live show. Tonight, we are going to hear from one of our friends and group members, Cynthia Mirabelli. And Cynthia is, she's a wife of an Army veteran. She is a mother of 3 daughters and elementary school teacher. So my props to my teachers. She's going on for 7 years, and she's also a high performance coach for mothers, balancing motherhood, high stress careers, and building their side hustle. Very interesting. So very interested in what Cynthia has to say with us tonight. As you may know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And one of the things that I was looking at in terms of content for this month, or at least this week, is to bring in some guests and that could help us talk about some things related to that topic. And I think that Cynthia is one of the great resources that we have, that she can help us in that area and just share with us a couple of tips and strategies based on her challenges and based on what she's teaching to other mothers. One of the things that I think regarding mental health awareness is that I think that, growing up, I personally, every time the topic of mental health came up as I grew up, it was always like a bad thing. And then, I don't know, it's kind of weird because, when you have a headache, you take a pill, an aspirin. When you have a throat ache, you go to the doctor, you get checked out. You have a toothache, you go to the dentist. These are all health-related things that, you address, right? And it's no big deal. But when it comes to mental health, there's always been this stigma like, oh, you kind of don't say it, or you just keep it to yourself. And over time, that just becomes like a taboo that nobody talks about. And I think that, it's gotten better over time. Like, I know, as an adult now, you can hear about it more. There's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's more out there, but there's still a big stigma. And I think that culturally, it also is, it varies depending on your culture and where you grew up. I think that it makes there's a big difference there as well. So hopefully the newer generation aren't going to grow up with that stigma that I grew up with and older generations grew up with. So this topic about mental health, I mean, you heard what I just said. Did you grow up with that kind of stigma similar to me?
Strangely enough, I feel like there wasn't necessarily a stigma about mental health within our family. Like, if it was family, it was like you could talk about it because my aunt and my grandfather actually worked at a mental health facility as a job. Like, they worked there. Okay. And so it wasn't necessarily as a family. Like, there was an awareness there. They were very self-educated. My mom was, like we did, but we weren't talking to other people. Like, it wasn't like you went and told your friends, like, hey, my aunt is, or my grandmother has this, and that's why she acts like this. You just kind of overlooked it and ha ha ha, isn't she silly? Mm-hmm. It was just kind of like a pat it down and make it seem normal, even though it wasn't, which made it harder, honestly, in the long run, because I didn't have anybody to talk to about it except for the people who were dealing with it all the time.
Yeah. And how do you think it impacts because these are the kinds of things that I think about. Where do you learn about this if people aren't talking about this? And I think that you learn about this, or people learn about it growing up if they're watching television and what they see in on television in terms of mental health, right? When I hear mental health, what word you think it's a common word that comes up?
Crazy,
Exactly. That's what they,
psychotic,
yep.
narcissistic. I mean, like I remember like you actually had people on at one point, like they're talking about narcissism and all of that. And I was like, it's interesting because mental health is right in front of us. It's always right in front of us and we don't even realize it. And working in a classroom with at-risk kids who deal with more trauma than I've even seen me or my own children go through. Like it's just like, wow, these are resilient kids, but they are suffering. And so it's kind of like, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover. You can't judge a person's mental health by the cover either, right? So
Right.
like, you know, you were kind of I guess you were we were discussing this like before this is having like, well, you know, I am smiling and I am happy, but I had just gone through a really big crisis with my 11-year-old and she's in the hospital to this day. She gets to come home on Wednesday, but she had a complete depressive breakdown, had suicidal ideation and all of this. And a lot of it stemming from being in accelerated classes, starting middle school, and then she's doing virtual, and then I had to go back into the classroom physically, and so she was here with her sister and didn't have another outlet. And so in navigating that, it was like, well, you can't judge a book by its cover just because I'm smiling, right? That doesn't mean that there isn't something bad happening, but also because there's something bad happening, you know, with my child doesn't mean that I have to be unhappy either, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what you went back to, Fernando, is it's important for us to talk about it, right? Because even though I'm smiling and I'm at school and I'm smiling the way I am, like because I processed it, right? And I'm showing up right now as the parent who needs to be functional and do get things done, right? Life still goes on, and so it's important for us to talk about it because nobody would know. I've had so many people, teachers, fellow teachers, come up to me, coworkers, and say, why are you feeling so good? Like, why do you look so happy? Are you okay? Like they think I'm covering it up. And I'm like, well, no, I just am because I've learned to deal with it. But I wouldn't have known if I did not seek out people who were talking about it, right? Like it's not normal to be miserable for days and days and days and days and days. Like you have to eventually come out of it and help your child and help your family. Because, you know, I have two other children and then my husband also, like we're all dealing with the crisis, right? But we still have to go to work and we still have to take care of our other two children and help them through it. And so talking about it is key, like having ways to access it, make it relatable to kids. There are some amazing books coming out and series are coming out with like children learning how to deal with trauma or learning how to have a parent who's chronically ill, whether that's mental or physical, right? Making it accessible to people who do see it as a stigma, right? Make it accessible to those individuals because we want to make it like find a bridge. Like,
Right.
why is it important to talk about it? Why do we need to break that cycle of covering it up or making it be a thing that you're shameful of? Instead
Mm-hmm.
of coming out like reach out and help. No, really, we're not going to judge you. We're in this together kind of a thing.
Wow, that's amazing. It's yeah. I mean it when you're I mean you kind of make a decision, right? You have a choice to make. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can't control everything that happens, but you know how you feel
Mm-hmm.
and what you do afterwards. It's up. You know, you can't control that. So you kind of make the choice. Do you put this? You know,
Yeah.
you stay in that state or you change it. And I think that you've kind of taken that the reins of that and made a decision to not stay in that um, bad state, right?
Absolutely. But that took time and
Mm-hmm.
self-education and a lot
Yeah.
of support, like reaching out to people who I know so many mothers now who have children with, you know, autistic children, for example. Like my 13-year-old, she's has autism and we didn't even know that. And she suffers with severe anxiety because of it.
Hmm.
And then dealing with my 11-year-old now, like 10 months later, it was crazy. I was like, so in the time, so flip back to like July when my 13-year-old had a complete like shutdown. Now I was good, but this time it's like I'm even better because between that time and now, I was like, how do we share this? How, it changed my life when my child went through that last summer. Um, it changed my life, right? And if something changes your life, it should change you. But you have a choice. Is it going to change me for the better? Am I going to improve the way that I react to crisis and to mental health situations in my family? Or am I going to choose to shut down and continue to spiral and to be part of the problem, really? Because if I'm in my, I mean, I'm not trying to say I didn't, binge watch the Mighty Ducks series on Disney Plus. I'm not
Hmm.
even kidding. I did. I gave myself that time though, because I learned if I don't, it's going to come out later when I don't want it to. So I allowed myself to process. And I, by doing a few different steps that I use, that I've kind of figured out that have helped me over the last 10 months. And now here we are, it happened again, just with a different child. And I felt like we kind of navigated it like 90% better this time, right? Like, and that's good. Any improvement is good. So, and I'm smiling and she's still in the hospital, but she sounds good too. So,
Wow. I mean, you're such a strong person. It's amazing the way you're sharing it. And I think that you have this gift of experience, that you have this background of mental health awareness already, like you said in your family, that you kind of, you were aware of it. Plus you learned a lot about, your state and how to change it and so you learned that. And, you have the situation that happened with your kids. Um, a lot of people, I think, a lot of parents, like you said, are experiencing this, on a daily basis, and they don't know what to do. They don't have the
mhm.
experience. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the awareness. So they keep it to themselves. Um, and that just leads to more suffering. And, for the kids, if they don't get their needs met, they grow up as adults with all of this
Mhm.
bottled up. So I think it's great that, mental health awareness, that for that reason, it's great to raise the awareness and for you to talk about it and share what you what you're sharing. Um, and yeah, so how do you, so you've said you've met with a lot of other mothers, and so how do you help them? Are you helping other people in this area?
Actually, I've been helping other mothers for some months now, and I had decided, through some training I'd done, and I'd seen some other friends of ours that we had met through, well, even your page, some people who are on your page even, but through UPW and everything last summer and whatever, and I was just like, I keep getting this told, like, if you're ashamed of it, like, so you're ashamed of it, you're not being 100% you're not sharing your story, you're not helping others truly, not fully, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I learned to take all that chaos and all that stuff that I learned, all that hard work I have done, and I decided to put it into a coaching program for mothers so that
Mm-hmm.
they can navigate high stress profession, high stress life, high stress situation, right? Like I'm dealing with being a teacher in the middle of COVID, um, came back in not knowing what I was doing 7 weeks ago, have a child going through a health crisis, another one who's finally on the mend from her own health crisis, but still has breakdowns, and trying to navigate my third child and keeping her healthy in this meantime, keeping myself, all of it. And then I'm also like, oh my gosh, I wanted to build my side hustle, but then I wasn't so passionate about that side hustle anymore. So I decided to make a coaching program, mostly because exactly why you brought me on here and exactly what your questions have really pertained to is the stigma, right? Like mothers are chicken with their head cut off. Oh, that's just how moms are. We're stressed out. Moms who work are stressed out. We don't have time for our kids, or we're always eating fast food and we're not doing this. We don't have healthy boundaries. That's why. I mean, that's a really big one, right? But if you don't mind, can I share one of the ways I help? I kind of shared it on my
Sure.
page last week, but I finally put this together into some steps that hopefully could help somebody who watches this. Do we
Sure.
have a
Yeah. Yeah.
second? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be really quick. Okay, so it's basically to help yourself be calm and clear-minded, because once you're calm, your mind is going to function and your body is going to function quite differently, even if you are a little bit stressed out and your nervous system is kind of still freaking out from what happened. Okay, so what I did multiple times after my first child went through her crisis in July, but something that I kind of put together and honed in on. The first thing was being able to shift your priorities quickly and set firm boundaries. So for me, a quick example of what happened a couple weeks ago for me, you know, I'm a teacher and it's very hard to find an in-person sub for in-person kids, which is what I'm doing. And so I had to quickly be like, you know what, it might be a stressor on my school and the staff I work with, but my child is more important. So I'm just like, look, this happened. I know you understand. And I was so grateful. Like whoever helps, like I will get my sub plans in as soon as I'm out of this emergency room, as soon as I've got my child stabilized. And everybody came together asking for help without apology. Really, you don't need to be sorry that your child went through an emergency. That was really important. And then I had another boundary that I think a lot of you guys will relate to, and that has a lot to do with social media. You don't have to tell everybody everything that's happening. And I put like a post on for prayer because I'm really huge on that. I was like, let me give my child all the positivity we can give her in this time, right, to help her. And so, but I was really careful, like in my messages or what I was consuming on social media. I didn't go on there and bloviate about it. I just was like, hey, like, pray, give me my time. That was so important. It's a healthy boundary that you need to take because it's really important what you consume while you're in a crisis. Number two, shift your energy and thoughts to the here and now. Being present is the most powerful thing you can ever do in your life, but being present in a crisis is like a superpower. So when you are sitting in that crisis, you need to, if it helps you, you're going to feel your body. You need to sit down, put your feet on the floor if you can. I did this in an emergency room with all the noises in the world, just like I need to get myself together. I was scrunched down and I was just like, this was the only place I could find myself, just like, okay, need a second. And I was just like, took 5 deep breaths, centered myself by saying, I am not ahead. I am not behind. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I said that a few times until my voice slowed down and my breath slowed down. That's actually, those phrases are a Jay Shetty thing that I borrowed. It's amazing and it has been life-changing. But the breathing part is everybody. You should always breathe. But once you're there, you can think, okay, I'm here. In my case, it was like I'm in a hospital. My child is safe right now. There are doctors here who know what they're doing. We don't know all the answers, and that's okay, right? Like not living in the future, not living in the past. You have to get to the present because at that point, my mind got clear. I knew exactly what I needed to do next, right? So once we got out of the emergency room and she was in a hospital with other children to stabilize her, they were very concerned about her coming home and being unsafe to herself, if that makes any sense. I started kind of realizing my child is not in my home and my child is in a hospital with all these other people who have so many other struggles, and I don't have any control over this now. Like literally it's like in the hands of the hospital and God. And so in that moment, I was like, I need to process this because I started kind of feeling I wasn't breathing again. So centering was still really important, but I was like, okay, I need to process this. And one of the best ways to process any kind of negative emotion and get yourself into a really good state, other than like screaming and yelling like, yes, 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 but you don't want to do that when your child is in a crisis and you're sad and you're disappointed in yourself. Like, what could I have done? Right. But I'm going to sit in that present, and I plugged into my inner child. So plugging into your inner child can come from different places. Okay. For me, it was watching a show that kind of got me out of my head, was fun loving. Like I said, for me, it was watching the Mighty Duck series on Disney Plus. It reminded me of my childhood. You know, I ate the chocolate ice cream. Like I wore the fuzzy socks, and I allowed myself a day. To feel things, but then I would go back and I'd be like, okay, let me do a few things. Let me serve others. I would go plug into some of my my friends and some of the mothers that I work with, and just kind of like, hey, how are you doing? And they'd ask about me and I'd be like, that's great, but I really wanted to see how you were doing, get my mind off of things if that's okay. And they were cool. Yeah. But the biggest takeaway from that is just giving yourself time to process it, but getting your mind off of it so that you can kind of get into a better state. And maybe that's not being as joyful as I am right now, but I've practiced it quite a bit. But games, playing games, you know, getting frisky with your spouse, even though you don't necessarily feel it, get a hug. You know, like I said, fuzzy socks are a big one, a blanket, you know, if you have a stuffed animal. I know that sounds so strange, but engaging the inner child really does help. It allows you to be vulnerable, and it allows you to bring all those things out that you need to cry it out and get it out. And then number 4, and the most important thing in any practice I do, is gratitude. So sealing everything with gratitude. And why do I do this? Because gratitude heals so much, just like love. But gratitude is something that is an action you can take in your own mind, and you're completely in control of that. So I can be grateful for, I was grateful for the doctors. I was grateful for the fact that I had insurance to get her to the doctors. I was grateful for breathing. I was grateful for the fact that I had clean clothes to wear. I mean, it was hard the first day to be like, this is what I'm grateful for, right? I'm grateful for all the people asking me how I'm doing. I'm grateful for the ability to say, no, I don't want to talk about it. We'll talk about it when I feel a little bit more like talking about it and I processed it in a couple of days. You know, being grateful for my husband supporting me through it, being grateful that my other 2 children are healthy at home and they're becoming happier, even though they were also traumatized a little by it. It's just like finding the littlest things to be grateful for, and those things get bigger and bigger, right? And so, you know, now I'm grateful that my daughter gets to come home on Wednesday. You know, I'm grateful that she'll get a chance to unplug at my mother's house for a few days so she can kind of slowly get back into being at our home where everything happened. You know, you find things to be grateful for, and things to be grateful for show up. And so it's like, it's just this beautiful process. So real quick, shift your priorities and set those boundaries so that you can focus on you and your family. Shift your energy and thoughts to the here and now, be present. Allow those moments of vulnerability and engage your inner child, and be grateful for absolutely everything. And those things to be grateful for get bigger and more frequent through that crisis, I promise.
Amazing points, Cynthia. I love it. I love it. You know, the inner child, you know, I'm just thinking about the inner child. You know, you don't, you know, the innocence, you don't worry so much about things that haven't happened yet. I think the inner child thing, you know, it's key. Processing the negative emotion. All these things are awesome. The breathing, the gratitude. You know, these are all tools that everybody can use to prepare themselves before and during a health crisis, like you said. So this has been great, Cynthia. I think we're gonna wrap it up, but I think this is a great conversation, and there's so much more that we could talk. And I like hearing you, and I like your energy. You know, you have tons. I know tons of more stuff to give. To share, you know, it's just I can see you as being like a crisis negotiator, like somebody who's like a first responder, because you know, like you said, you know, in the middle of a crisis, if you use these tools, you know, and you know, you keep yourself centered, you're like, you know, you said about when we're in the emergency room, how you collected yourself.
I'm gonna be honest, I was a mess a little bit. I was getting a little, I mean, I want to be fair, and I'll be even quicker than before, because it's kind of hard to be quick when you have 4 steps. But the whole deal here for me is I was not okay, but because I understood that what me not being okay, what that identity looked like, that victim, like everything was happening at me, you know, and I was sitting in it, because I had learned to come out of that. You know what I mean? Like, and it takes practice, but having tools that you can have and use them in any order you need to use them in, that is important too, because knowing that everything's not going to be perfect in that moment, and you might still cry, and you might still, like, you know, eat the ice cream again the next day, you know, just because you're like, man, I'm still not feeling great. And it's okay to feel icky, but it's also okay to be happy during those times and have happy moments, and allow yourself to process it and just acknowledge it, accept it, and be the best version of you for your child or your spouse or your friend. your parent, whoever it is, for yourself. Really, that's at the end of the day, is to do this for yourself, because you're not gaining a day by living in all of that anxiety, and that it's just so bad for your nervous system. It's so terrible for your own mental well-being. So
Yeah,
it becomes a cycle for sure.
absolutely. And I think keeping that positive mindset and that utilizing all these tools. I think that the challenge is when we're out and surrounded by people that are encouraging us to feel sad, to feel all of these, and they don't have these tools because they're not natural. I don't think they come naturally. Like, you kind of learn about it, or you make mistakes and you
Come
learn about it.
naturally when we're children, and
Yeah.
then we're
And then
fed a
we,
load
and
of
then,
crap.
yeah,
We're fed a load of crap.
yeah,
It's all
yeah,
those labels, those things we hear from people, all of the
yeah,
messaging. Oh, there's so much. And as adults, we keep doing it too. And that's why I said, like, set your boundaries in social media during that time too. Because
yeah,
believe me, the last thing I want to do is go and watch some sappy, like, a dog just passed away thing. Like, I don't need to make myself more sad. Like,
yeah,
that's kind of how I felt. I was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh. But it's just funny because, just the timing of all of this and the timing of you asking me to be on here. And I'm so grateful. I really am. And I say it all the time, but I'm so grateful to let my voice be heard, because it means I'm sharing the voice of my children, and I'm sharing the voice of my family, and sharing the voice of my students and parents, and all the people I know who need to hear this, or
Mhm.
all the people I know who need to share their story. And by me being open about it, and you bringing us on here and being open about it, it changes lives. Even if it changes one life, like, that's huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because it means that we gave them the power. We gave them that power back of their lives, a little bit of control back of the situation, so that they can turn it around.
All right. Amazing, Cynthia. This has been amazing. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being here and sharing
That
your knowledge.
confetti. That's cool.
Yay! All right, guys. This has been a bonus episode of Mindset of Steel with Cynthia Mirabelli. Um, Leave us a comment here, and if you have any questions, comment below, and we'll follow up. Thanks
Yeah, and
again.
I'll check
And
out the comments too. So if you have any questions, I have no problem either
yeah. All
answering
right.
them.
Awesome. All right. Bye, Cynthia. Thank you.
Bye.
That was awesome. Bye, everybody.